Morning, everybody. We're here today discussing the Freedom of Information Act, very important issue. This statute is a critical tool that Americans use to keep our government transparent and accountable. FOIA was recommended for passage by the Senate Judiciary Committee October 4, 1965, and it became law 1966. This watershed legislation signaled a sea change. No longer would government information be assumed to be out of reach of the average American. Instead, the assumption became that Americans would have access to their government and its working. The language from Judiciary Committee report, October 1965, quote, "The committee feels that this bill as amended would establish a much-needed policy of disclosure while balancing the necessary interests of confidentiality. A government by secrecy benefits no one. It injures the people it seeks to serve. It injures its own integrity and operation. It breeds mistrust, dampens the fervor of its citizens, and mocks their loyalty," end of quote. 60 years later, these words still ring true. And 60 years later, this committee continues to be a champion and caretaker of this law, and that's why we're here today. The federal government has often been resistant to required disclosures. FOIA's been attacked, circumvented, ignored, bypassed, and skirted. FOIA has also been used as a shield against congressional oversight, specifically my oversight. I can't tell you how many times that I've requested records from the executive branch under both Republicans and Democrats, and in turn, I get records with FOIA redactions. Congress didn't create FOIA for it to be used against the people it was intended to serve. It wasn't created to allow the federal government to hide information from Congress or the American people. We've accordingly come back again and again to end the workarounds and loopholes that bureaucrats use to avoid disclosure. This committee also keeps the law up to date in our rapidly changing world. When FOIA was signed into law in 1966, there was no internet, no electronic records, not even fax machines. In our digital era, the government must adapt to serve its citizens, especially when it comes to transparency. This is especially important given the volumes of requests that we're starting to see. Let's consider where we are today. FOIA's requests reached a record high in 2024 with more than 1.5 million requests. This is a 25% increase from the previous fiscal year. The number of requests processed by agencies also reached a record high at just under 1.5 million. This represents a 34% increase over previous year. FOIA is therefore clearly a tool that the American people value and use. Now, problems remain. Backlogs continue to be a problem. The time it takes for agencies to fulfill requests varies greatly, from less than a day in some cases to over 7 years in others. Access continues to be a problem. Too often, the only remedy for a FOIA denial is for the requester to file a lawsuit. But this option is obviously expensive for individuals and even nonprofits. The quality of records received also continues to be a problem. Now we have this situation of a document full of blacked out lines. That is not a meaningful disclosure, and it happens too often. This administration must turn a new leaf and be more transparent than other administrations. And so far, I commend their effort to this end. Many say that sunshine is the best disinfectant. FOIA is a vital law that shines bright sunlight on those who govern our nation and steward its resources. That's why we've continued to amend and improve FOIA. That's why it's worth our time and oversight today. Now to Senator Durbin, and then I'll introduce our guests.
Thanks, Chairman Grassley.